Welcome back to Honoring the Journey. I'm Leslie Neese. I'm usually here with my friend Karen. She couldn't be here today, so I am flying solo. This should be fun though, because I'm actually flying solo with someone. So I guess I'm really not solo, but Omar is with us today. And Omar was a survivor on season 42, which wasn't that long ago, just a couple years ago. And, of course, I was on Survivor a million years ago. And so we have that in common. But also, I've been following Omar on social media, and we just got into some really great conversations, just kind of behind the scenes, and I got to know him a little bit. And I was like, man, I really want to hear a little bit about your journey. I think if you've ever wondered, see, I feel like a lot of times in spaces, especially evangelical spaces or even any religion, really, the stories that you hear of other religions are usually from people who really aren't a part of them. They're
Mhm.
people who are telling you about them. And so Omar is Muslim. So I would love for him to share about his faith and all of that. I think that'll help educate us as to what they believe and how they see life. And I just think it's beautiful. I think we're all just trying to connect with God and the divine. And I'm just excited to get to know you a little better today, Omar. Thank you so much for joining me on Honoring the Journey.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was quite an honor when you reached out, and of course, I was so happy to do it. I remember being in high school watching Survivor China my last year before
Oh,
taking off to university, and I loved watching you as well. And I think I reached out to you actually on Facebook around that time.
stop it.
Yeah, and I was like, "Well, I
Was
really
I nice?
appreciate." Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yes,
good.
yes, but I think, being a Muslim, you don't really see a lot of people like yourself on TV,
Yeah.
and so I remember very distinctly watching the premiere of Survivor China and, going into the I think it was a Buddhist temple or
Yeah. Yeah. It
or
was a Buddhist
or it was a
temple.
non-religious ceremony, but I remember at the time I was in high school and I was unfamiliar with myself with like a lot of other cultures, and I was a little bit nervous if I had been in your shoes about what I would have done, like would I be bowing down and praying? And then I saw somebody that was able to, still maintain their faith and be respectful. And even
Oh,
though we didn't share the same faith, that meant a lot watching the show. I think that when you are kind of a religious minority as well, especially, in Canada, the US, the Western world, where I am, you have to look to kind of see something about yourself and other people that are
yeah.
not like you, and you're forced to do that. And I think that sometimes that's challenging in the other direction from what I've experienced.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so it can lead to sometimes then a little bit of alienation. So I'm excited, like when I heard about like what your podcast was about,
Mhm.
it seemed like the perfect fit because,
Really?
we're
Yeah.
seeking that connection and similarity and really humanity that unites us
Yes.
rather
Yeah.
than what divides us.
Yeah. And I think, you totally get the whole vision then. That's what we're trying
Mhm.
to do here on Honoring the Journey is honor everybody's journey. And I think a lot of times there's so much fear in hearing someone's journey. You're so afraid, oh no, they're going to tell me something that's going to take me off my path. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, we're human beings. We're all on this path together and we can learn from each other. And it's not scary. And I'm just excited to learn more about you. That it touches my heart like you don't even know that you remember that and that it impacted you even as a young boy that because that was a defining moment in my life when I walked out of that temple. And I thought I was leaving the show. I thought I was done. I thought they were going to
Right.
take me off because they said if you offend the culture in any way, we were going to put your alternate in. So I thought that was it for me. And so when they kept me in the game, I was like, oh, well, okay, this is a bonus. I
Yeah.
actually get to play. But unfortunately, when you play a game and you make a move like that, like right off the bat, everybody kind of knows who you are
Right.
and what you're about. So I probably gave a little too much about myself away in that move, but I did the right thing for myself at the time. I
Hmm.
don't have regrets.
Yeah.
And Survivor was just, I think the first time that I was kind of taken out of my bubble, my
Yeah.
little familiarity, Bible Belt, Christian evangelical bubble, and meeting people of different faiths, different walks of life, different, cultures. It was just overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
And it started, I think, this journey. How did
Yeah.
you feel? Like, well, first of all, let's back up. I want to understand.
Yeah.
How long did you apply for Survivor? Did you apply? Were you approached? Like, what was that about? Why did you want to do
Yeah.
Survivor? You're a
Well, I
veterinarian by trade, right? So,
yes, yeah. So, I mean, I
for
am not,
exotic
like
animals.
one of those, model actors that got recruited off the street.
So they didn't see
So,
you in your bathing suit on the
no.
beach and be like, "Oh, we got to have this guy." Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
Yeah. Me
no.
neither, Omar.
I was a lifelong fan. Like, I watched from
Yeah.
season 1. I was very engaged with the show. I loved it. Like, and honestly, I mean, it's no lie. Like, Survivor China was one of my favorite seasons because they kind of went back to the basics, 16 people. And I just thought the character development was amazing. Some of the wackiest people you'll ever see kind of
Amazing.
interacting with one another. And it was more about a personality than a strategy season to some extent, which I enjoyed.
Yeah. No, I miss
But
that. I really do. I miss that.
yeah, yeah. So I applied actually twice before I got a call. And then because Canadians were not allowed on. So once the Canadians were allowed to apply, I applied and I didn't hear back the first time. I applied again. I heard back right before I was about to make my third tape. And then I got on.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was lucky.
So you like got called and were cast that time. Like you didn't have
Yes,
to wait.
yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
I
I
think
don't
you
know.
applied a couple times, right?
No, 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 11. Like, for
11. Yeah,
five
yeah,
and a
yeah.
half
Yeah. I
years,
remember that. Yeah.
consistently, and then finally they called, and I didn't believe it was them. I thought somebody was playing a joke on me.
Yeah, and it's so
I was
interesting
like,
because
"Who
it
is
depends,
this?"
like, what time. I feel like
Yeah.
if you, like, time capsuled yourself now from then, like, you probably would have gone the first time you applied because 'cause they're looking for
Mhm.
different things now. I think they're looking for
Right.
engaging people with different backstories and fans and people that know the game but have, like, a very unique perspective and personality in their own life. So,
Yeah.
it's, I think a reflection of I think you were ahead of your time in some ways.
Aw, well, okay, I'll take that. So, what was your audition video? I love hearing these stories because clearly I made quite a few of them, so
Yeah. The first time I applied, I made a video. I remember I was not super happy in my job. I had just graduated and I was a year out and doing an internship where I was working like 80 to 100 hours a week with
Ooh,
like very little pay. Um, I remember it was like $26,000 for the whole year trying to like
wow.
live on that and pay your debt and
Is
get
it
by.
different in Canada? Like, is that normal in Canada
For
or
internships and residencies, it
yeah.
is normal, and
Wow.
it's not okay, but it is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, I think they use the term internship and training program to, like, basically allow free labor to some extent, but I was, like,
Yes.
very not happy in the situation, and, so I just pulled out my camera at 8 or 9 PM one night when I was alone with one of my patients, Bird,
A
and had
bird.
her on my shoulder and we just made a video. But I think that the mistake with that was I think they really want people that like are really excited about their life and in a good place and are
Mhm.
happy and are fully, it's not something that replaces what they have. It's something
Right.
that Survivor is something that's an additional to that. And so at the time I was like, I just want to get out of here, let me get out, and that's not what they want. So the second
No,
time it was
no.
more like going through all aspects of my life, like faith, the show, work, personal life, and explaining how that would make me play the game a bit better. And I think that that
Oh,
worked. Yeah.
interesting. Very cool.
Mhm.
So, have you always been raised in Canada, or how did you get
Yeah.
there, or what? You've always been there?
Yeah. So my parents, they immigrated from India. They didn't live in the same village, but they were like pretty close, and
Uh-huh.
they had an arranged marriage and got married in Canada, and
An
they've
arranged
been here.
marriage.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
would they say
which
that
is
that was good for them, or, like
Um, I don't know. I don't think it was good for them in particular,
yeah,
but
but
I
it
think
can work.
that I've seen it work a lot. And I think the interesting thing is, that's one thing that's a cultural component to
Right,
I
yeah.
think on our season, there was another Indian there named Swati, and one of her tribe mates had asked her, like, when are your parents gonna marry you off? And she was like, that's not what they're going to
That's
do
not
for
the way it
me.
works.
Yeah, that's not what they're gonna do for me, but, I mean, there's a lot of variability, but it is often
Huh.
kind of a stereotype, and I think that there's a lot of, negative connotations that go along with the word arranged marriage, but what's so interesting is that culturally now, people are watching something like Love Is Blind, which
Yeah, I
is
was gonna say, I'm
kind of
totally
an
into this
arranged.
show that kinda
Yeah,
reminds me of this, and
yeah,
sometimes
exactly,
it works really well, and sometimes
and
it's
sometimes not.
horrific.
Yeah, exactly, and it's like, now that sort of thing is, like, glorified, but before it was, like, kinda scary or unknown, and it's not like people
Yeah,
think arranged marriage is like you just put them together on the altar, but, like, they do meet before and
they
all of
meet,
that,
they
so
get to
it's very
date and
similar to,
yeah,
like, Love Is Blind,
uh-huh.
but I would say that's not for me, but, it is for other
But hey,
people, and it worked for them, but, they immigrated here, and then I was born in Canada, and I've lived here my whole life.
your whole life.
I have never been to India, but, hope to go
You've
someday.
never been there. That's
No.
interesting. That
Yeah.
would be so you know what? I bet you're really gonna feel so much emotion when you go there.
Yeah, I hope so because it's something that I was very much excited like, the thing is we didn't really have a lot of money growing up, so we
Mm,
didn't really have an opportunity to go and visit over there,
right.
and then, I always wanted to go with my dad, and he was gonna show me around at the national parks and, visit family and stuff like that, and then he passed away, and then I
Oh,
am now in
I'm
the
sorry.
position to, like, maybe go financially, but, then it's like, without him, I don't know, but I think when
Oh.
I'm ready, I will go, and I think I'll have a great time.
Well, that's good. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just I feel like going ba I don't know, I haven't done 23andMe, but my sister did, and
Right.
so she I'm pretty sure we're pretty
Yeah.
similar as far as all that goes. So I used her stuff, and I realized, we have a lot of French, and we have a lot
Oh,
and I'm like, "I just wanna go back to my homeland.
yeah.
I just wanna know what it's like. I wanna see if something happens in my heart because there's,
Yeah.
like, this thing I think that sometimes you feel that's connected to where you're
Yeah.
from that even if you've never been there, it feels a little like home.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah, there's a lot
I
of
can't wait
pride
now
there too.
listen, when you
Mhm.
come back, because 'cause you're gonna go one day. I just know
Yeah.
it, Omar.
Yeah.
So when you come back, I want you back on the show, and I wanna talk
Okay, yeah,
about your India experience because that sounds
absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, I can't wait.
Okay. So you grew up in
Yeah,
Canada and
yeah,
then went to school. You're a veterinarian for what?
yes.
Exotic animals?
Yeah, so I only do exotic animals now, I went into vet school for exotic animals, like, I was actually this is kind of embarrassing to admit now, but going into vet school, I was kind of afraid of dogs. I didn't
No.
really Yeah, I didn't really like them, and I think
Mm,
culturally as well, like, and it's one of those things where, you're not familiar with something, and then you're taught to kinda be afraid, like, in a
yeah.
Muslim household, a lot of people don't realize, but, like, a lot of people believe you shouldn't have a dog inside,
Oh, really?
because, like, if they lick you or, you're not clean for prayers and stuff like that, and so I was
Right.
always kind of taught to be aversive of dogs in general, and then one time I got chased by a dog in the park, and it was trying to
Oh,
play with me, but I didn't know that,
yeah.
and so I was very afraid,
Yeah, yeah.
and
That makes
so,
sense.
yeah, I
Totally.
was just,
Yeah.
like, unfamiliar with
Yeah.
them, and then I remember in vet school, you have these exams where there's a dog there and you have to do a physical exam on it, like, feel the lymph nodes, listen to the heart, do all of that, and I walked in, I was, like, the only one that wore gloves for it, and I was like, "I'm allergic," but it was really just because I didn't wanna touch it. But
That's
now it's
so
fine,
cute.
like, I,
That's so cute.
I like dogs now, and I don't have a
Yeah,
problem
yeah.
with them, but I think the reason that going into exotic animals specifically is actually very relevant to, like, this podcast in a sense, because
Mhm.
you grow up, if you look at, like, when you're growing up and you think about pets, it's like everybody has a dog or a cat, but no one
Right,
really
yeah.
cares about the little birds or the snakes or the lizards or the rabbits or the rodents and stuff like that, and I got very into birds because I was like, "I want something that's not what everybody else likes. Like, I want to look after something that nobody else cares for in a sense." And,
Right.
um, you know, culturally, that's kind of what we felt like. Like, we felt like a little bit like an outsider, like we don't really belong anywhere. Nobody really looks out for us. And so I wanted
Mm.
to channel that energy in a way. And I think I did it somewhat unconsciously, but then
Yeah, but then
kind
it
of
all
the
made sense when
process,
you
yeah,
yeah.
it made sense a lot in hindsight, especially the survivor journey and the life journey where it's taking me, like, looking back and reflecting, like, it does make a lot of sense. Because I remember, like my training program, the one that I did to become a specialist in exotic
Uh-huh.
animals, it got shut down right before Survivor started to air, and I was so
Oh,
mad about it. And I,
yeah.
because like that's how you train people to do it. And now you've gotten rid of the only program in all of our province, and in our yeah, all of our province and pretty much in our country to train specialists in that field. I'm like, well, who's going to look out for them? Who's going to look at, and I think it was so visceral for me that I'm
Yeah.
thinking back and I think there was more to it than that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, okay, so tell me a little bit about Survivor. Like, okay, so pre-Survivor Omar versus post-Survivor Omar. Have you because it changes everyone in some way.
Yeah, I think
How has Survivor, I don't know, evolved Omar?
Yeah, I think, going in, I was fairly in a stable place, with who I thought I was and what I was capable of doing, but also you never really know what you're capable of until you get put in that situation. I'd never camped in my life before. I'm afraid
What?
of bugs. Yeah,
Oh
I
my
didn't know
gosh.
what I was getting myself into. I don't know how to swim that well. So it was something that, and I think a lot of times earlier in life, like, I didn't take any risks. I didn't, like, learn
Mm,
how to go skating or learn how to swim or I don't know how to ride a bicycle. Like, these are all things that I didn't do because I'm just not that person that would like take that leap. But
right.
I found out when I started doing that in university, like if you take risks, like I remember volunteering for a raptor organization where we would take care of birds of prey, and I was like, wow, that's a powerful animal.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of nervous, but I would like to do it. And you take that risk, and then you're so rewarded when you open yourself up to a new experience,
Mm,
and you learn things about yourself. So I kind of
I
acquired
love
the skill
that.
to do that before Survivor. So going on to it, I felt like I knew I could do it, but I didn't know how I was going to get through it. And then, getting through it and playing the game that I thought I could play as well. Like, I had an
Mhm.
idea in my mind of how I would form alliances and relationships and, play somewhat like Todd, for instance, from your
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't know if I can do it. We'll see. And then you get out there and, I did pretty much everything I wanted to do except for win. So I think that that was like fulfilling in terms
Yeah.
of that. So yeah, I think it grew me in terms of self confidence. I think before and after Survivor, like I went through life changes after where my 7 year relationship ended, and that was quite
Ooh,
um,
traumatic. Yeah.
traumatic. Yeah, and so I think
Yeah.
it's interesting because I'm still recovering from that. So I
Mm,
don't think that my place post Survivor is where it was before, but it's also not related to Survivor. Like, I think Survivor still may be better.
yeah, yeah. Well, okay. So when you got to Fiji, because everything's in Fiji now, right? Which,
Mhm,
by the
yeah.
way, I got to tell you, so jealous.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
dreamed of being on Survivor for 5.5 years, and I get
Yeah,
dumped in a mud pit in the middle of
yeah,
China. You know what
yeah.
I mean? No beaches, no palm trees, no coconuts.
Brutal.
It was brutal, and it smelled like butt. It was so
Yeah,
bad.
it
But
looked like you had the worst of the 2 camps, I have to
we
say.
really did.
Yeah,
Everything about it was like nothing like what I expected. And I'm so jealous too of you that you said, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna play like this. And then you
yeah,
did. And I'm like, okay, no. I was like, I'm gonna go and I'm not gonna be the mom. I'm not
yeah.
gonna do this. I'm not gonna do that. And I did everything I said I wasn't gonna do. Because when you get out there and you meet people, you're like, wait, I know it's a game, but like we're literally, well, I don't know how hard it is in Fiji. Probably not from what I hear, Courtney
Mhm.
has been both
Yeah,
on an island and in
yes.
China, and
Yeah,
she tells me that it was like a vacation being on an
yeah.
island
Oh, yeah,
compared to
yeah,
what we went through.
yeah,
So, I'm thinking to myself, we were going through some stuff. I mean,
yeah,
we were really literally surviving
yeah.
together. And so you get so close but like everybody is so different and
Mhm.
everybody's type A,
Yeah,
most of us and everybody is vying for $1 million. Somehow I forgot all of that and just like connected with these people on a human level.
yeah.
So who did you connect with the most? And were they somebody that you would have maybe connected with in your everyday life, or was it different?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think to touch on that too, I think the culture of the show has shifted a lot in terms of who
Mm,
they cast and the people that have expectations. Like back then, a lot of people hadn't weren't that familiar with the show. In terms of major strategists, there wasn't really a
right.
lot of backstabbing. Like, it was maybe a little bit here and there. But
Right.
coming into this new era, everybody's everybody knows that's what's
You've
gonna
been
happen.
watching it since you were born practically. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and everybody, like, they glorify the big players, so, like, everybody's kind of
Yeah.
familiar and wants that chase, and everybody's a big fan, so for the most part, you kind of expect that, and I think it was, generally more accepted. In terms of who I connected with, I connected a lot with Marianne, who, lives very close to me. She is from Ajax, and she's a very strong Christian faith, and so, we connected pretty quickly, and she even made me a prayer mat that they showed on the show, which was a nice little moment.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, but she's one who's very secure with her faith and seeks
Mhm.
opportunities to connect with other people on theirs instead of, you know, sometimes the opposite can happen. And so for her and
Yeah.
I, we connected quite quickly, but we also are
Were
very
you on the
similar.
same tribe
Yeah,
or
yeah, we were on
okay,
the
so
same
you were on the
tribe.
same tribe. I wonder if they put you on the same tribe because you were different sometimes
Yeah, I wonder.
they're
Yeah,
hoping to get some conflict and then they're like, "Dang it," because that's what
yeah,
happened with me when, getting along with Todd, the
with
gay
Courtney
Mormon
and
flight
oh
attendant,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah,
and Courtney, the girl who
yeah,
said the F word every other
yeah,
word, and
yeah,
I
yeah.
think they expected us to just, like, butt
Clash.
heads, and we
Yeah.
didn't.
And sometimes that's
It's
the
so
funnest
different.
relationships,
I know. I'm
the
like, I could have
unexpected ones.
never been your friend. Not
Yeah,
because I wouldn't have wanted to be,
yeah,
but, like, if it wasn't for Survivor putting me in
absolutely.
this situation. So you and Marianne connected, and that's
Yeah, we
that's
connected
beautiful.
very well, and we're also very similar, like, we have a similar, sense of humor,
Yeah.
all of and we were both science people, so, like, it was an easy connection. I also connected with, Lindsay as well, who is a dietitian from New Jersey, and
Mhm.
we just had similar personalities, and we're able to view the game in a similar way. Even Jonathan and I, he's from Alabama, rural Alabama, very, very different. We were able to connect because you are bonding over and all of my tribe mates really originally I got along very well with, but and Mariah was very special. She's also a Christian a Christian mom that was very open to other people and was very warm. But we were able to like it is that thing where even though we weren't in the rules of China, you are still unfamiliar. You don't have a baseline for what Survivor should be like. We weren't given any food.
Yeah.
We were stranded and we weren't familiar with camping. And so you do feel like you rely on them for very basic needs. So you bond very,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
quickly. And also one of our tribe mates on day 3 left the game for medical reasons. So
Oh,
that really
man.
bonded us all even closer because we're 6 and now we're 5 and
And
we're
you had to
against 2 other
fight.
tribes of 6 and we have to fight.
Right.
So I think it was a really intense bond very quickly. But quite honestly, like I was able to connect with almost everybody that I met on the show in some meaningful way. But I think it's also
I
partially
love that.
because, you know, nobody out there that I met was very much like me culturally or religiously exactly. Like
Same.
the starting tribe. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Same. They called
You
me
should have been
Sister
on the other
Christian.
tribe.
I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
should have, but they knew that. That's why they put me
yeah.
on the one they did, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
But starting tribe I was on, it was just me and then, 5 other people, 4 of which were very strong Christians. So
Mm.
I did not but in everyday life, I'm used to that. So
I was
that's
gonna ask you that, like, as a Muslim and being around the
Mhm.
Christians, did you ask a lot of questions, or did you already know about their faith, or
Yeah.
how did that feel?
So I mean, I knew about the Christian faith pretty well because also not only because that's what I've always been surrounded by, like that's
Mhm.
the major
The
religion
majority, yeah.
in the area, and I didn't go to the Muslim only school. Most of my friends were not my race or religion, so I'm very used to being the minority and trying to find things to connect on that aren't based on identity. So for me, that was a natural fit. But
Did you get, if you don't mind if I ask,
yeah.
like, as a child growing up and being in the minority,
Mhm.
was it hard for you? Did they treat you different? Did it take a while to fit in? Like, how did
Yeah.
that work?
I think it really did shape me, and again, some of it was unconscious and things that I would just do that I didn't realize I was doing until, after the Survivor experience or into adulthood where I would have other experiences that kind of taught me, "Oh, that's why you're acting the way that you are." I think
Mm,
somebody in my position and with my personality, it was more about catering to others and just fitting in. I think the general mentality for Muslims, especially growing up, is, keep your head down, just fit in, don't cause waves, just be
mm.
there because you're lucky to be here. You shouldn't be here. So just nobody really wants you here, so just act as if like,
You
cater
belong.
to other
Yeah.
people, basically.
Yeah.
Don't put your needs forth
Whew.
first. Don't, um, make waves at all, and that really helped on Survivor in terms of
Mhm.
gameplay because I can go to somebody for an alliance or an outcome and give them the information to allow them to come to a conclusion that I want without having to force it upon them, and
'Cause you're
that makes
used
you
to yeah, it's
yeah,
almost like a manipulation, but it's more not like an
it's
ugly
like a
one, but
coping
like a you
mechanism,
have
yeah.
to. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
survival, literally.
Yeah, it's like
Wow,
putting
that's
other people's
interesting.
needs first,
Right.
and working with them rather than, forcing them to do what you want, and
Mhm.
that is something that I have, I guess, learned in terms of not making waves, no conflict, just kind of be around. So I think that that shaped my personality. Like earlier on in life, like before 9/11, especially, even
Mm.
then there were still things that
Oh, yeah.
about myself that I was self-conscious about because I remember in school, like we would have pizza day, for instance, and I can't eat pepperoni, but everybody else
Mm.
wanted that. And sometimes people will be like, "Well, can we do half and half?" And I'd be like, I don't think so, because like it still
It could
crosses
drip
over."
over
But
there, yeah,
yeah,
mhm.
but you have to like say that and be different from everybody else, or people will be
Oh,
like,
it's hard.
"Well, why can't you eat pork?" And it's like, I don't really want to get into that. I just want to just be normal like everybody else because nobody asks you why you can do that or do this or that.
Yeah,
And when they would have a new class and they would go through the attendance list, everybody's names were easy to pronounce, and then they would get to mine, and then they would ask me, "What's your name?" And I would just say Omar because it was just easier to do that rather than say it how it is, like Omar, which is harder for people to pronounce. And then if you
right.
do say that, then you're like on blast in front of the whole class.
Yeah.
So it just little things like that just made you feel
Yeah.
like you wanted to tuck your head down, I would say.
Oh, that is so hard, especially as a kid, but it's also I don't know, I'm starting to see that life, there's suffering in life. There just is, and
Mhm.
I think it's the other side of that is how we grow and evolve as humans. We learn how to cope, we learn how to deal with, the certain things, but so that probably did help you a lot on Survivor because of all the different perspectives and you
Yeah.
just being like, "Whatever it takes, I'm gonna fit in." Like, I'm gonna
Yeah,
figure out
yeah,
how to make this happen,
yeah,
and it's different for each
yeah.
situation.
And I think, like, you
Wow.
really, really watch interactions, or at least I
Mhm.
did, and I think that's
Yeah.
not necessarily all cultural, it's partly personality, but I
Oh,
would
yeah.
watch what people would do that would annoy other people, and I would avoid those behaviors because I just wanted to fit in. So I think that, that made me very like, socially aware, so that was also
Mhm.
a skill that translated, but in real life, you don't use those skills to, like, advance yourself above other people, but in a game of
Yeah.
Survivor, that's what you can do with that, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned that you don't ride bikes, you don't do sport there's nothing that you really kind of so how were the challenges for you?
Well, see, I think that's the
How
thing.
did you do?
Yeah, I think that's the area actually that surprised me the most,
You
because
surprise yourself. I love that.
yeah, yeah, other than the swimming, even some of the swimming I did okay in, but I was pretty good at most of them,
Good.
and especially the puzzles, like, I was good
Okay.
at, so I think that it just is a self, and I think what I learned as well is I went into those being so anxious, being like, "I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it," and then I think looking back now, I'd be like, "No, just attack it, like, you will do it, like, just get through
Hmm.
it," and I think that that's a mentality that I took away a little bit from the experience,
So now
and
you feel
actually
like you can
Tyson
rule the world, huh? Now you feel like
yeah,
you can
yeah,
do
Tyson
anything.
yeah, exactly. Tyson actually verbalized that for me. He's like, "You have to believe that you can do something,
Yeah.
before you do it, and even just that slight mental shift without even changing anything about you can make a big difference."
Ooh, that's good. That's really good. So,
Yeah.
we need to take a quick break, but when we get back, Omar, I really want to talk about your Muslim faith,
Mhm.
like what that looks like, how you grew up, and then also, there's some things going on in the world right now that I think
Yeah.
you've expressed concern for on your social media, and I really respect you for that. So, we're going to talk a little bit about that when we come back. We're back with Omar. Is that here? Is that how you say your last name or
Zahir, yeah,
Zahir? Okay,
yeah.
Zahir. Sorry. And how do you say Omar again?
Omer.
Omer. Omar
That's
Zahir.
pretty good, yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty good.
you look at me. I want to be respectful.
Yeah.
It's funny. I live in Utah, and I don't know if you
Yeah,
know much about the United States, but that's where like
yeah.
all of the Mormons live.
Yeah,
And
I do.
so I am not Mormon,
Yeah,
but they don't like to be called Mormons. I always forget that, but like they a few years back said we'd rather be called Latter-day Saints or LDS.
right,
So I try to do that as well,
right.
when I
Okay,
speak
gotcha.
about them. So it's, you got to be respectful of whatever. But so you, Omer, you grew up did you grow up as a Muslim,
Yep.
or is that something that, okay, so your parents were
Yeah.
already in the faith, and what did that look like for you as a kid?
Yeah, so I mean, growing up, my parents, well, my whole family was Muslim, but I would say my parents were not my religious role models, I guess, because they didn't really like we didn't eat pork, they didn't drink alcohol.
Right.
We culturally were fairly normal, but on a day-to-day basis, they didn't really pray or do any of that stuff. So my religious side more so was fostered by my grandparents. Um,
Oh,
and
okay.
they were the ones that really instilled that they would come visit every summer and or we would visit them. And that's when I would learn to like read Arabic. I would
Oh,
learn to
wow.
pray and really like out of all of our cousins, we had 7 cousins that kind of grew up together and around the same
Mhm.
age. I'm one of 2 that really kept up with faith. The other ones don't really pray or do any of that stuff, on a
Right.
regular basis. I mean, they have their own faiths in their own way, but as far as, like, doing the day-to-day things, I think I'm one of those people because how they taught me resonated with me, but at the same time, I can take that beauty of that gift and also reflect on some of the ways in which they taught me that were maybe not super healthy in some ways. And
Right.
so
Right.
I think that they taught a lot from a fear based
Yeah.
like method of passing on faith. Like they'd be like,
Yeah.
if you don't do that, God will be mad
Then
at you.
yes,
Or
yes, I can relate to that.
yeah, yes, yes, and it's like,
Yeah.
there was this fear mentality of you must do this, or if you do this, you'll be rewarded, and if you don't, you'll be
Mhm. Yeah.
punished. And I think that they were also very afraid of coming here and having their grandkids grow up in an environment that's not
Mm.
consistent with the faith because they grew up in an area where everybody was the same religion. So coming here
Right,
and having
right.
all of these influences around you, I think that was very scary. So they were very much trying to be protective as well. But I had to eventually, as I grew up, realize the difference between how fear-based faith learning is actually not as
Mhm.
sustainable as a true faith. I think that
Yeah.
what I learned is that a fear-based faith is actually I hope I don't offend anybody with this, but it's like kind of
No.
like a weak faith in some sense because it's
No, I
insecure.
mean, yeah. Well, I mean, and I don't know what the Quran has to say about God and that, but like,
Mhm,
or Allah, is that what you
mhm.
call God?
Yeah,
Is
it's the equivalent
okay.
of God. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's the same. It's just a
yeah.
different, yeah.
Term,
I
yeah,
remember it when I was a Christian, I was like, that is not the same. And now, and
yeah,
not that I'm not I guess I still love Jesus. I just
yeah,
it's very different now, but
yeah,
that's a whole nother podcast. But
yeah.
I do really see now that we're all just trying to connect with the divine. You and I have had a
Mhm,
discussion about this, and
mhm.
we're all trying to do it in the way that we're taught in our culture,
Yeah,
in our faith, in our families, in our lives.
mhm.
And I I in the Christian faith, we are taught that there is no fear in perfect love because perfect love casts out fear, and fear has
Right,
to do with punishment. That is a literal Bible verse in, I believe it's First John 4. And
right.
so I really, to me, it doesn't make sense to base a faith on if you don't, then, and then fill in the blank. It's
Yeah.
more about let's move toward a relationship with God and other people,
Mhm.
right? I don't know.
Exactly, and I think the hard part and it really came into fruition with my relationship that I had for 7 years because,
Mhm.
she was of a very strong Christian faith, or I should say, strong, in
Fear-based
quotations,
faith.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
and she would what I've come to terms with is she was probably very, tolerant, I guess, of me because obviously we had a relationship, and she knew I was Muslim,
For a long
but
time.
I
Yeah.
don't know if I think there's a difference between tolerance and acceptance, and I think that
Yes.
that is something I reflected upon and I realized in hindsight because her entire
Mm.
family and, like, church not entire family, many of her siblings were okay with me, but, her church and her parents, like, were very fear-based towards me. I remember when we started dating, it was like, "Would he ever choose you over ISIS?" And it's like, where did that come from?
Oh
That's
my
crazy
gosh.
to say. When my father was like, passing away in the hospital, she was getting messages being like, "You shouldn't be with him. You're getting too close." And it's like, that's a moment where I need her. So like, why would you do that? Like those
Mm.
little things of like, because I think I was a threat in some ways, I guess, to the church community.
Which
Um,
makes like, why?
exactly. That's why I don't
Like, what did
understand
you
that,
do except
I
live
think it's
your
just
life
being right. I think it's
different?
just
You
like,
just believe
will
different.
I pull her away from God? I guess is the fear there.
Yeah.
And I personally was of the mindset of like, you can be of different faith backgrounds and you can bring somebody closer to God, because if you focus on those commonalities, it doesn't mean you have to agree on everything
Yes.
or do everything. But in my mind personally, and maybe I was able to more easily come to that conclusion at a younger age than she could, because I am a religious minority, so I have to
Mhm.
seek that on a day-to-day basis, and I didn't grow up, in like her community entirely was church all the time, and church friends, church family, church everything, and yeah,
You just, like, touched on something that I never considered, never
with
considered.
this,
When I yeah, when with what you just said about how, like, you were in the religious minority, so you
mhm,
learned to just love people right where they were, to
yeah,
just try to listen and not try to impose. Maybe that's why my situation
yeah,
really amped up when I moved from the Bible Belt, where I
to you,
was in the majority,
yeah,
to an area where I'm in the minority.
yep, yep,
And the only option, like, if I'm gonna be afraid of these people, this is everybody I live around. What am I
mhm,
just gonna live in fear? That's
mhm,
not love. You know what I mean?
exactly,
Like, that doesn't
yeah,
have so instead of fearing them, I just love them right where they are, and I learned in the process that it's okay to do that with everyone.
yes,
Like, you
yeah,
don't have to impose everything, you
yeah,
people are not projects to convert. They
yeah,
are people to love right where
yeah,
they are. And
exactly.
that is so like, wow, I just had an aha moment. Thank you,
Yeah,
Omar.
good. Yeah, of course. And I feel just like in my mind, it's why, if your faith is really strong, truly where it is, then what somebody else believes or someone else does should not threaten that. If
Right.
they do, then maybe your faith is not as strong as you thought it was. And I think that that is like an important concept for people to like understand, because what
Yes.
I remember right before the show started airing, for instance, her she I could tell she was nervous and scared, and I was like, well, what's wrong? Like, why are you so nervous for this to air? And she eventually just said like, I'm afraid for my parents to see you pray on TV. And I was like, isn't that, we've been together for 7 years, and that is the thing that you are afraid of? Like, you're afraid of me praying on TV, which is so meaningful for so many people who didn't have
Right.
anybody to watch, to see somebody like them just be a normal person on
Just
TV,
be
like
yourself.
to be
Yeah.
represented and to share something that's so special to me in front of other people, and yet that's threatening to you and your family and your
Mm.
church. Like, that is a sign of weakness in my opinion, and like, I don't understand how you can be so strong in your faith and have something that's so special to someone else be so threatening towards it. And I think that
Mm.
um, it was really hard to kind of cope with that, because my mentality before all of that relationship and in general and before the state of the world now was that people are often afraid of Muslims, and they're afraid of us, and they hate us or they don't like us. And some people are tolerant or accepting, but there are people out there that just don't accept you for you. But I think that most of those people do that because they don't know you. And if they really knew you, they would like you. But the sad part is like that
Yes.
situation. Yeah, that's what I thought though.
That's
But
what we're
then like,
doing, though.
yeah,
Like,
that's
that's
what
what
we're
we're
doing,
doing.
yeah. But
Yes.
then, like, with her, it's like, for 7 years we were together, you knew who I was, you loved me, I loved
Mm.
you, and that wasn't enough for you to, like, accept me for who I am. So
No.
that was a
No wonder
very,
this hurt. No wonder this is
yeah,
traumatic for you. I mean,
yeah,
that's really hard. And your quote that you said, "There is a big difference between tolerance and acceptance." That
mhm,
was a lesson that you had to learn through that suffering,
yeah,
was she was
yeah,
basically tolerating you and hoping that maybe you would change. And I think
yes,
we go into things thinking, "I'm gonna tolerate this person where they are now because I'm gonna change them.
right,
And then
right,
once I
right,
change them, then I can accept them."
right,
And
right,
that's what I'm talking about when I say people become projects. They
Yep.
become things to fix instead of
Yep.
people to love right where they are. And
Yeah.
the freedom that I'm feeling now that I have kind of stepped away from more of a I was so dogmatic in everything I believed, and there was so much fear,
Mhm.
um, based in it. Like, if I don't do this, like, my whole thing was like, Omar, 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh my gosh, this guy's Muslim. He's probably going to go to hell. So I
Right.
need to make sure he knows that, and
Yeah.
I would try to share that because not because I was a jerk, not
Yeah.
because I wanted to be right, but because
Yeah.
I thought I was. And I thought,
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
don't tell him this, he is going to go to. And so
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had to go through such a process of
Yeah.
like, I can still hold on to Christ. I can
Yeah.
still hold on to God. I can still hold on to even scripture. I don't have to be so dogmatic about it that
I love
if
that.
there's something based in fear, I toss it now. I'm like, nope,
Yeah.
that's not from
I
God.
love that. I think that
Right?
the thing that you also touched on that's so important, I think, is like, what does faith mean to you? What does God mean to you? And I think that for me, I see God as like our light and somebody
Mhm.
that is going to help. It's is all good. Basically,
Yes.
that's all I can
Yes.
say. So
Yeah.
if something is all good, how can we? I think there's often a dichotomy in fear-based learning of faith and that concept, because
Mm,
if you look at some things, the way that we may have been taught, like the greater we, like either your faith, my faith, whomever, but
right.
like if if God is just, I think
Yeah.
that just is good. So I
Mhm.
believe that God must be just. If God is just, then how can we all be born in different circumstances that may lead us to different faiths? Like you, for instance, would not have the same if Islam was the true religion
Right.
and the one thing to lead to heaven. You are born in a situation where you would not have an equal opportunity or
Right.
even a fair
I'd be screwed.
opportunity to right to get to that. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, how can we judge how can we be the ones to judge where people are going when we don't
Mhm.
fully understand as much as God may? And I if you believe God is just, then I don't think there can necessarily be one path only to salvation. Maybe
Mm.
somebody can get there in their own way based on
Where
something
they're
that I don't
from, what they
understand.
yeah, I
Yeah, like
exactly. We don't have the corner on all of it. And if we're really honest, I remember somebody asked me once when I was deep in my faith, "Is it possible that you could be wrong?"
right,
And here was my answer, and I felt very confident and like I was so smart by saying this. Yeah, of course I could be wrong. But if I am wrong, it's okay. I've lived a good life. I've loved people, blah, 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 blah. But if I'm right, then you're going to hell.
right,
Like,
right,
okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. That
right.
just to me, I at the time it made sense. At the time I was
Yeah,
like, mic drop. I'm so
yeah,
smart. And now
yeah,
I'm like, wait, Leslie, if there's no fear in perfect love and perfect love casts out fear because fear has to do with punishment and
mhm,
that is a scripture, then why would God say you are condemned because you believe different when that
yeah,
is not the message of Christ at
yeah.
all? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing, it's like when I would learn like, when we were together, like, we would read both books, kind of simultaneously, and it's like, when I would read the Bible, like, the message that I would take away from it was not necessarily the one that was being projected, and I didn't really
Mhm.
understand, and I think the thing is there's a lot of external factors that actually probably go into something like that. I think when you are in a religious minority, you are forced to take the more communal approach, like I
Mhm.
mentioned before, because you're trying to fit in
Fit
and trying
in.
to not
Yeah.
to like make a community. But when
Right.
you are the religious majority, and whether that's here where it's Christianity or in the Middle East in some places where it's Islam, or in Israel where it's Judaism, or where it's Buddhism, whatever it may be, I think
Right.
it is easy to then focus on what is like it's easy to cast people out that are not like you because you
Mhm.
have enough of a community. And when you have the majority, you can also then like it's hard because what shapes government and policy as well, I think, is a lot more influenced by religion than we would
Mhm.
want
Then
it
we
to be.
realize. Oh,
And then we
absolutely.
realize, and I think you had
Mhm.
mentioned the 2016 election was also one that really sparked a lot of
Mhm.
questions in you, and I think that that's exactly right. Like, I think a lot of times government or like political parties will use religion to manipulate people into
Mhm.
making something a certain way just so that they can maintain power, and then people
And
start pushing certain
control.
and
Yes.
control. And I think that when you have money, power, influence, and control that start to influence and infiltrate into religion, that's where it can become a bit corrupt. And I think we don't even realize
Absolutely.
it's happening sometimes.
No, and you feel like it's right because it
Right.
lines up with what you believe. So,
Right.
and the thing I remember in the Christian faith, like you said, you read the Bible sometimes, you get a different message, right? You know what they would say, and what I would have said 10 years ago was like, well, the Bible says that when you become a believer in Jesus Christ, you then get the Holy Spirit. And when
Right.
you have the Holy Spirit, then you get the correct interpretation.
Right.
So the interpretation that they're teaching is the
Yeah.
correct interpretation. And if you
Yeah.
don't have the Holy Spirit, you're going to read it, you're going to get a different message.
Yeah.
And so I had the Holy Spirit, because I
Yeah.
said a prayer and did the thing and surrendered my life, and then so my interpretation had to be right.
Yeah.
But I was really just regurgitating what I was
Yeah.
taught by the teachers in my faith of what
Yeah.
it meant. And so then, yes, of course, it felt like it was the right thing because it's all I'd ever heard. And
That's so
so,
interesting that you said that
yeah,
because, like, that was one thing that I was also told during
yeah.
that process, and the thing is, it's hard because I wanna be
Oh,
respectful,
you mean by
obviously, to my
your
relationship. Yeah,
ex?
yeah, but, like,
Oh,
it was hard because I wanted to be respectful of that re I
yeah,
still wanna be respectful of that relationship, but obviously,
absolutely.
it's very relevant to what we're talking about, so I
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
speak on that a little bit about my experiences, especially
right.
because I haven't really, like, been able to do that
Mhm,
outside of here, but,
right,
in terms of, like, the concept of, you know, that was a concept that always challenge like, I would struggle with as somebody who wasn't growing up in that environment, was the concept of the Holy Spirit. Once you believe, you take that on, and then you make decisions through God. But then it's
right.
like my science background is very um, I don't think science is incongruent with religion personally, but
Mm-mm,
if we're trying to evaluate religious points like that from a
yes,
scientific perspective,
and
I really struggled
translations.
with it because it's like
Mhm.
if like it's like a hypothesis. If the hypothesis is that the Holy Spirit will allow you to make better decisions, then the prediction of that hypothesis is that Christians on average will make better and more moral decisions than other people.
So
And
show me that.
exactly, and that's not something that we see grossly in the world. In general, that is also a viewpoint that's a little bit discriminatory because it's
It
like,
is. It's like, well,
yeah,
you don't have the Holy Spirit, so you don't know you don't
you're
know
not
what's up.
moral or you won't
But
make
the
the right
truth
decisions.
is, when they started doing when my religion got into bed with politics
Mhm.
and got very, insistent about it,
Yeah.
and I lost friends because I didn't agree,
Right, right,
I started saying, "What else have I been taught
right,
that doesn't
right,
make sense? Because this can't be the Holy Spirit. If that is the Holy Spirit making that decision, how is this spirit holy?" Like, and
right.
it's never Jesus's message was never go change the world by making laws
Yeah,
and by passing, things that in the government, that's how we're going to
yeah,
change the world. No, 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 no. His message was give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God. Like, don't mix those two things. Don't get that confused. That's a worldly system.
absolutely.
We're either working in this system over here that's all about love and peace and kindness and goodness and all the things that we want, or we're working in the system over here that's about control and, just being better than somebody, us versus them, all of the things that I hate.
Yeah,
So, like, to me, I was like, there's just no way. There's no way that this is right anymore. And that's when
yeah,
my balls started rolling, like, down the hill.
and
I was
that's
like,
what
"Uh-oh."
the yeah, and the method to kind of maintain that control often is to outcast, or
Yeah.
if you
Mhm.
don't believe that, or if you
Yeah.
disagree with that, then you're not part of our community. And that's such a
Yes.
powerful tool because if that's all you known, and now you can't be part of what you've known, it may scare people into falling in line, but that's not
Oh, yeah.
stable faith. And I think what you
No.
said is so powerful to me because I want to bring our original part to full
Mhm.
circle. So I had messaged you like right after China or something, and you
Mhm.
had responded with like a very kind message. And I was like, that's great. And then what happened a few years later actually was the partner that I've been talking about, she and I actually broke up within a year of our relationship first for a brief period of
Mm.
time before getting back together, and it was for religious reasons,
Mm.
obviously. So I had reached out to you again because I saw something in you that was like, um, like, kind of what you're describing now, exactly what you're describing now, like,
Huh.
that's who I saw you as back then, and I actually didn't receive a response that time, and I was like, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense because, she must just not agree with the relationship anyway, so I was wrong about that,"
I
but,
probably
and
didn't, but
yeah,
I don't remember this, so I don't know.
yeah,
Maybe I didn't get
yeah,
it.
maybe
Where did
perhaps
was
not,
it
but it was
No,
it was
but,
on
like,
Facebook.
that makes sense, though, like, I mean, literally, if it was 10 years ago, it was
Yeah.
did you say?
Or it was, probably like 2015, 20
Okay, yeah,
something or
I
2016,
really
something around
started
there.
to deconstruct in 2016, so
Yeah.
2015, I mean, I was having doubts way
Yeah.
back, I mean, probably since Survivor in 2007,
Right.
but I think I was clinging for dear freaking life
Yeah,
to
yeah,
my
yeah,
I was
yeah,
trying, and I
yeah,
was like, "Don't confuse me, whoever you are." I'm
yeah,
sure that's probably what I
yeah.
was like, "I don't wanna talk
I'm
about
sure
this
it is
because I
too,
don't
like,
even
I
know
had
what
no
I'm."
doubt, but it's so
Yeah,
interesting that, I
yeah,
reached out to you as somebody that was a strong Christian faith because I saw something in you that was more like what we're talking about now, and
yeah,
then the fact that you fully came to that place is just, like, so
mhm.
crazy to me, like, I'm so happy that, I'm
I
so
found
happy
the
for that.
freedom.
Yeah,
Yeah, me
yeah.
too. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah,
That's really sweet, and I'm sorry I didn't respond. I
that's okay.
honestly sometimes, you get I mean, now that you've been on
Yeah.
Survivor, you get
Oh, yeah, yeah.
messages that you don't even get, and
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just like,
Yeah,
"Dang it."
yeah,
Yeah, or you'll get it, like, 5 years later when
yeah,
you go, "Oh, I should check this folder." Oh gosh, there's
yeah,
a lot of
truly, I
people
mean, that
reaching
happens
out
all
to
the
me.
time, and it
Yeah.
wasn't about, like, it was a malicious, sort of ignorance
No,
or anything like that, but it was
no,
like,
no.
"Oh, like, maybe it wasn't the right thing
Yeah.
to do to reach out about that because maybe
No,
they don't
no,
really
it
believe that."
was.
It was like, "I don't know."
Yeah, I mean, maybe I just didn't know. At that point in 2015, it was starting to get real,
Yeah, for
and I
sure.
was starting to ask, but I was still very deep in ministry and doing, I
Yeah,
was and that was the hard part for me too, was stepping away from my faith, was stepping away from my job
right,
and what I did
right.
for a living. And, I am literally on the bottom working my way up again because I
Yeah,
have lost so many. A lot of people have lost respect for me, which
mhm,
I get it. I totally
yeah,
get it. I would have lost respect for me too 10 years ago. I'd have been
right,
like, what the heck is wrong with her? I
right,
can't believe she's buying into this. Until you've been through something, just shut your mouth. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, just shut your
yeah,
mouth. You don't know what's going on.
yeah.
And that's my,
I
I'm like,
honestly respect that so much, and the thing is hearing that from somebody who is in a position of privilege and is in a
mm,
position of the religious majority, like
mhm.
you may have made a lot of people mad or
Mhm.
uncomfortable or whatever it may be, but
Yeah,
there's another side to that coin where
right,
you don't know how meaningful that is to someone like me, to someone like other people that just want to be seen by somebody
right.
and to be appreciated by somebody, even if we don't share the exact same faith. Like, it's
Mm,
not about faith, it's about humanity. And so that
absolutely.
work is so important. And that's why I'm so
Yeah,
supportive of this podcast and what you're doing
thank
because
you.
it's incredibly meaningful to people that don't think that anybody could ever stand up for them in that way. And so I
Yeah,
think that even if you have to start from the ground up, what happens, what you will build, I truly believe will be stronger than anything you had before. But how has that, if it's okay asking, but like how has that affected like your immediate family and all of that? Like where does that, because that can be stressful too. But
yeah,
I don't really know what your journey is there at all. 'Cause I only know
yeah.
yours.
No, 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 I will say, I mean, all 4 of my kids and my husband are incredibly supportive of me. As a matter of fact, I just texted my kids this morning because a friend of mine was struggling. A friend of mine's, like, family member has decided, "I don't wanna be around you for a while," and, I reached out to my kids and I said, "Thank you for loving me through whatever I go through." Like, for always respecting me, loving me, listening, letting me be myself, letting me find my way without judging me. Thank you for always being right there. And they're like, "What is going on?" I'm like, I'm just hurting right now. I'm hurting and I'm sad for my friend." And I'm so thankful that I have a family that's supportive. But now, when I say that, I mean my nuclear family, like my kids and my husband,
Yeah.
all on the same page. I have, yeah, my mom, she's very supportive of me no matter what, but I don't think she agrees with a lot of what I
Right.
feel now.
Right.
My dad's, I have well, I have a stepdad and a bio dad who I
Yeah,
love, and
yeah,
they are both very strong believers, Christians, and
mhm,
so we haven't even talked about it. I know they
right,
know.
right,
Nobody's talking to me. The people that are upset are just like, I don't want to talk to her. They're talking to
right,
each other, but they're not talking to me. And I
yeah,
don't know why that is. I
yeah,
feel like if they would, they'd probably feel better about it.
yeah.
Um,
I think it's that, like you
it's
said, you don't
fear.
wanna hear
Yeah.
something that may blow you away,
Yeah.
like, especially for somebody that, you were so entrenched in it.
Mhm.
So, if that can fall and the thing is, what's interesting is I don't really see you as falling away from
Mm-mm.
God. It's actually,
Me
in my
either.
opinion, falling closer to
Yes.
God. It's just a different viewpoint from what was
Hmm.
taught, and I think that
Yes.
it's so I
It's
can't even
okay,
put to
guys.
words how beautiful it is.
I'm
Yeah.
more I'm more alive than I've ever been.
Mhm.
I feel more connected to humanity, to other people. I don't God, there's just no agenda anymore. Like,
Yeah,
as far as I gotta get this person into heaven when they die,
right.
my empathy is way too high to be that anymore. I just can't
Yeah,
do it. And I
yeah,
I I tell people, I go, "Bottom line, my mental health is better now that I've
right.
stopped believing in hell, now that I've stopped believing, different certain theology, like the rapture. I don't know if you've ever heard of the
Yeah,
Christian
yeah,
rapture, but holy crap. Talk about terrifying. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
Like there's just so many of the theologies that I was taught that weren't even in the original Christian doctrine
Mhm.
that have kind of they have been brought into the faith, which is funny because I'm trying to just get rid of that stuff. I don't want to get rid of
Right.
the good stuff. I just want to
Yeah,
get rid of the stuff that makes me anxious.
right,
And
absolutely.
because there is no fear in perfect love. Perfect love casts out fear, and fear has to do with punishment. And I just every day that verse just goes through my head. It's like, does that instill fear in you? If so, walk away. Don't
Right.
even go. Don't even go there. And, I don't know, sorry, I'm in a tangent, but
No, I
I
love
wanna
it, I
give
love
you a little bit of I wanna give you a voice here
yeah,
to share your heart for Palestine right now, because
for
I
sure.
feel like, you're very, very vocal about it, which I have not
Mhm,
been, and to be
mhm.
honest, I feel like a jerk about that, but I also am like, I honestly don't understand
Yeah,
what's
for
going
sure.
on, and then I feel like, there are 2 sides to every story, and this side, I love people on both and the thing I've found with you is so do you. Like, you
Mhm.
understand
Yeah,
that these are human beings on both sides.
yeah,
So,
100%.
tell me why you are so vocal about this on your social media. Tell me
Yeah.
what that comes from.
Yeah, I think that I mean, the hard part again is, like, I'm not Palestinian, but I am Muslim, and oftentimes those are often grouped all together as a
Together. Yeah.
monolith, and,
Right.
um, you know, I am very used to now it's sad that I'm used to, like, seeing people that look like me, that look like my nieces, that look like my sisters, that look like my mom, that look like my dad, that look like my family and community just be murdered on mass, and the thing is, like, the it's hard because everybody grows up with their own trauma and their own experiences,
Yeah.
but the way that Palestinians have grown up with their trauma, they have no advocacy or outlet for safety. Nobody looks out for them.
Mhm.
They are the scapegoat and under collective punishment can be murdered without consequence in any way. And I think it comes down to like this component of dehumanization that's occurred. And I think a lot of people just don't see Muslims or brown people or Palestinians as the same level, whether it's conscious or unconscious. You see the dehumanizing language. You see it, and in the media where reports are like, 100 Gazans were killed instead of murdered, whereas when the opposite occurs, it's murdered or
Murdered.
slayed or
Oh, yeah.
language or things like that. And I think that it really goes back to even the word. The thing is, people can be good or bad no matter what
No
religion,
matter what
race,
religion,
or what
yeah.
they are.
Yeah,
And
culture.
there are people that stand up for Palestinians of all types of people. Like you
Mhm.
look at a pro-Palestinian protest, there's people from all walks of life there. There's many vocal members of the Jewish community as part of that. And that's so
Mm.
important to have those Jewish allies that are working
Right.
to for solidarity and safety for everyone, because until everybody is safe, nobody can be safe. And the a lot of the reasons to continue what is happening towards them are based in fear, racism, and also like this mentality that things will be better. But if you traumatize people to this degree for this long, like, it will never be better, and it's a
Yeah.
lot of based on dehumanization, like, they don't matter as much, and it's not okay, and the thing is, if we have to believe people in their positions' voices on what's been happening to them, and they have not been experiencing freedom or safety, not just in the last few months, but for many, many decades,
Yeah.
and so, I think there is a place where we need to hear their voices and realize all the restrictions and like some there was this is the most basic thing and the least important thing about going to the movies, but it can take somebody in Gaza over 5 hours to go see a movie and they might be rejected at each blockade. Like, that is not
Man.
freedom. That's
No.
before any of this happened. It's been going on for a very long
So
time.
that's not even just since this happened. This has been
Yeah.
the way it's
Yeah.
always been. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and it's
Oh,
like,
wow.
I think there's a lot more empowerment there's this notion that, obviously Israelis or Jewish people won't be safe until, Hamas is destroyed, but
Mhm.
I mean, I don't n like, screw Hamas, they don't even
Yeah.
matter, it's the civilians that matter, like, they're the ones that are dying
Right.
en masse for what's going on, and I think there's this notion that we can think of like, well, we won't be safe until there's eradication. But there's also this other notion of like, what led to that to begin with? I
Mm.
think that you have violence born from violence. And
Mhm.
if you dismantle the system that led to that violence, you will get rid of that violence. And so it's almost like a fire's been set and you're just trying to put out the fire but not locate the arsonist or whatever. Like, there's a root cause to everything. And until the people of Palestine have the ability to have autonomy and safety and freedom, um, in their own right, there
Mm.
will not be safety for anyone. And I think
Wow.
that that's an important thing to know. And if we look at this whole experience as well, has really taught me, it's really, and especially like I have to really shout out the Israelis that are fighting for ceasefire and
Mhm.
for safety
Yeah.
of Palestinians and community, because this is about humanity. It's not about one side or the other.
Yeah, it's not about us versus them. It's about, hey,
Stopping
these are
death.
human beings that are not these human beings are innocent, and
Yeah.
they are casualties of something. We forget that there are extremists in everything.
Hmm.
Whether I know I for when 9/11 happened, I think
Yeah.
most Americans were afraid of Muslims.
They were.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I hate
Yeah.
that. I hate
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
it was put into our minds.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, if somebody was coming after Christians, they would come after everybody in America because we
Yeah.
say we are a Christian nation. But
Yeah.
not
Truly.
everybody in America is a Christian. A lot of people don't even know what that doctrine is. So
Right.
it's like, but we lump and lump and lump. And then it's
Hmm.
just us versus them. We want to be right. There's just in every nation, religion, everything, there is always extremists, and they're the ones that get the press.
Yeah.
And it's happening there. I see it.
Yeah, and it's really like, looking back at kind of reflecting on my whole life, like, I realized there are so many instances in which Muslims are dehumanized that I didn't really
Mhm.
even realize before. Like,
Wow.
it's a lot of it is language and a lot of it is scare tactics, and like, even the word terrorism, for instance, like,
Mhm.
terrorism is only used to describe when brown people or Muslims are
Right.
committing violence.
It's
You could
true.
have a man who shoots up a school, he's not called a terrorist, or he might be
No.
called a domestic terrorist, which is
Yeah.
like, oh, he's a subset. That's not even like the
It's, like,
standard
not as
default
dangerous,
terrorist.
kinda
Yeah.
like a domesticated animal.
Yeah,
It's not as
exactly.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
default is
yeah,
that it's a brown person that's doing it or a Muslim that's doing it, and then it's something else or something special if it's something different, or they're just a crazy person,
yeah,
and it's um like, that word roots so much fear because it dehumanizes, it separates that population
yep.
from everybody else. Like, we would never be capable of anything like that.
No.
But these people are capable of terrorism, and that's so scary because innocent
Mm.
people can die, but it's like innocent people that are brown or Muslim are dying all the time. Um, in Iraq and um, Afghanistan, like, a lot of innocent civilians died for something that they didn't do. And so I
Right.
think that this is not something that's new, but it's probably the most intense that it has ever been. And like, looking at, are you familiar with the term like honor killing, for instance?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
so yeah, a lot of times in the media, a brown person that kills their wife or their daughter or or son or whatever, as an honor is labeled an honor killing, and that is labeled a particular way to make it so scary, and different from everybody else. Like we would never be capable of that, but it doesn't mean that obviously that that's okay. But if you look at the
Mm-mm.
grander scheme of things, like I'll backtrack and then go back to that point. But if you look at OCD, OCD manifests in North America often as eating disorders because, people's, um, that's the cultural pressure is body
Right,
image.
right.
Whereas
Hmm.
in other countries, OCD often manifests as compulsive hand washing. So if you look
Hmm.
at violence against women, it happens in every culture.
Every
And
culture, yeah.
women are always the victims of violence to men because
Mhm.
they're less privileged, and there's a lot of sexism that's blatant across the world. It's just
Right.
that, in that culture it may manifest this way, but how is that different than the guy who beats his wife or kills
Yeah.
them for falling out of line, like that happens. Violence against women happens everywhere, but one is labeled a particular way to separate from the rest of the population. And I think that
Yeah.
those little things like that is something that I've really realized over time. And I think that the word terrorism really should be not used for brown people anymore because it's
Yeah.
been used in a way that has caused so much
Well, it's very
death and
triggering.
innocence.
It's
Yeah.
very triggering to people who are uninformed, who
Right.
are, I mean, and honestly, it's our culture is teaching us this. I mean, it's
Mhm.
all
It is,
over
yes.
CNN or
Yeah,
MSNBC or
yeah.
Fox or whatever. You terrorism, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. War
Whereas
on terror,
whereas
it's
when
yeah.
when a school gets shot up, it's a school shooting.
Mhm. Right.
It's not
Yeah,
terror.
and we
That's
protect our gun
terrorism, guys.
rights in that
It's
situation.
terrorism. Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
and that's a whole nother
yeah,
thing, and that's
yeah.
like I mean, there are churches that give guns away
Right,
as a prize
right,
for
right,
certain I'm like, "Are you out of your minds?" Like,
right.
what is happening to the
Yeah,
world,
I know,
Homer? I don't get this.
it's like the thing is, I feel like it's and, also before I go into that, like, it's also, like, even the word Islamophobia, it's like,
Yeah.
if you're afraid of a lion, for instance, like, that
Mhm.
fear is understandable because a lion could kill you, but you know that most lions won't do that if you keep your distance or whatever. But, like, when you use the word Islamophobia, it's like it puts there's something inherently actually to fear about them, but it can be irrational at times. And it's like,
Mhm.
why is the onus on, like, it takes away from, in my opinion, the onus of the person displaying the hate and puts it on to the people experiencing it. And so I also
Wow.
think that Islamophobia should be retired as a word. I think it should be
Mhm.
anti-Islamic hate or whatever, another word that doesn't put the onus on the victim of that.
Mm.
But I think that the problem that I'm like very generally apolitical, but it's like when people that look like my family are dying, like I can't not be. But it
Right.
also has opened my eyes to like other things and realizing how much of our policy are shaped by religion in some ways, even in this,
Mhm.
like in North America, like Republicans will often tie the issue of abortion to everything so that they can get those voters and like
Right.
galvanize them. And religion is being weaponized in ways. And when it comes to like money, power, influence, sometimes the best way to get those things is through religious manipulation. And I think that
Mhm.
there's a certain subset of people across all religions that benefit from using religious manipulation
Yep.
and the consequence or historical traumas to manipulate constituents. And it has
Mhm.
resulted in such mass violence. Like, I think we need to all prioritize humanity and like safety of people and understanding of people, because when you understand someone, how can you advocate for their death?
Right.
If
Yes.
Israeli citizens and Palestinian citizens were connecting and being equals, like, or like having
Looking each other
friendship,
in the eyes,
yeah,
and I
this
think
would
that that
not be
is
happening.
yeah, like, I really and that's I think I mean, that's a higher extreme, but it's one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast. Let's
Mhm.
listen. Let's look people in the eye. Let's hear their story because guess what? They're probably not as scary as you've been told.
Right,
Like, it's probably nothing like what you've been told. This
right,
is just a human being
yeah,
trying to get through life connected to
yeah,
God in some way, and we just man,
yeah,
I don't know how we're supposed to do this, but,
yeah. And it's
fear,
also like, I
man.
think, yeah, and I think people also, obviously, what happened on October 7th was horrible. Like,
Yeah.
no innocent people should die. everything that happened before October 7th is horrible. Everything that's happened since October 7th is horrible.
Has been
It's all
horrible.
really bad. And it's like,
Mhm.
I feel like a few people at the top are benefiting from such violence and death, and it's not okay. Like, I feel like we can support our own faith and our own religion and our own culture and our own people without hurting other people. And I think that
Yeah.
that should be a
Do no
priority
harm.
for all.
Do
Yeah,
no harm. That is
truly.
like, I mean, and basically that was the message of Christ too,
Hmm.
and I'm sure Muhammad and,
Hmm.
all the leaders of these faiths would be horrified
Yeah,
at how we're treating each other to try to defend them.
truly.
Like you said, a faith that is genuine and real doesn't need to be, you don't need to be afraid and you don't need to defend it. It is literally just so personal and real. You don't have to make everybody believe exactly what you believe.
Right.
Just love them. I mean,
Yeah.
I just get so worked up. Sorry. I'm just so sad.
Yeah.
I'm sad.
Yeah.
There's just,
True.
but I'm also I'm encouraged that there's
Yeah.
voices like yours that are
Yeah.
out there, that
And it is
there are
hard.
people who are looking it in the eye and
Yeah.
trying to help other people see.
Yeah. It's really hard to speak out sometimes because, like, even like close friends,
Mhm.
they don't see things the same way. And it's hard because it's like, I want it to be very clear that I truly believe in the safety of all innocent civilians, including
Right.
like
Including
everybody.
Israeli.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think the way that I advocate and what I think should happen is actually for the benefit of everybody. I think that everybody would be
Right.
safer if everybody was actually safe. And I mean, it's true. Like, how could you can't expect violence to breed peace. You expect peace to breed peace. And that is truly how I feel.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And you just because you advocate for a certain group of people doesn't mean that you are against, just because you're
Exactly.
for something doesn't mean you're against something. It's like
Right.
I'm for the thriving and flourishing of humanity, period.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that includes everyone.
Yeah.
And if until we start to see that, I don't think that we will be safe, Omer. I really don't. I think that
True.
it's going to be, we've got to stop seeing color, um,
Hmm.
religions, differences. We've got to start, like, I mean, the best thing that you can do is really find commonality instead of what we have that's different. And I think that's why you and I work. That's why
Yeah.
I get along with you, because we were like immediately like, what do we have in common? This is so fun.
Yeah.
This is so great,
Yeah.
and instead of focusing on what's so different. And I think I don't know anybody in humanity who doesn't want flourishing and
Yeah. And the thing is, like,
uh,
I feel stronger in my faith and my
right.
background after talking to you, and we're
Mhm.
not from the same
On the
background.
same
Like,
page,
that's the
right? Yeah.
thing. It
And
could
it's
be seen
okay.
as threatening, and
Yeah. It's
it's
not.
beautiful to me, like, it truly
Yeah.
is. And so, and also I had a full circle question as well. Like,
Yeah.
I think, watching you on episode 1 of China and stepping
Mhm.
out of the temple, like, that meant something to me as somebody who's completely different than you at a young age. And it wasn't done in a disrespectful way. It was very respectful and emotional. But,
Yeah.
from where you were then to where you were now, do you think your reaction would have been the same or different?
I love this question. I would say my reaction would be different today, but um, but knowing what I knew then and where I was in my faith at that moment, I did the right thing for myself
Yeah,
then.
exactly. Yeah, for
But
sure.
now I think I would have looked for the commonalities and not the
Right.
differences. I would have said, I can put my face on the floor and pray to Jesus because he knows my heart. Like, it
Yeah.
would be different. I don't, but I also find that I'm so respectful now that I've stopped and started listening
Yeah.
to people instead of pushing them away or being
Yeah.
afraid. I I could bow and it wouldn't mean, it's kind of like what we just said. Like, you can be pro something and
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you're anti something
Yeah.
else. Like, I think there's room in my heart and in my life now because I've evolved as a person. Um, and I've grown. And I honestly, I mean, I have Survivor to thank for that, for
Yeah.
getting me out of my bubble for the first time, for showing me. I mean, it was like a mirror being held up to me, like, Leslie,
Yeah.
people made assumptions about me too that I
Yeah.
feel like I bursted that. I'm like, that's not who she is.
Yeah.
I feel like we all went in with our presupposition, what we thought these people were going to be like, and then
Yeah.
fell in love with each other because
Yeah.
we
Of who you
struggled.
are.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we went through suffering together, because we
Yeah.
survived together. And, we can do that as humans. That's just a microcosm of society.
Yeah.
I mean, Survivor is just a microcosm.
Yeah, and
When
that
you
moment,
just,
like what you just said was like resonating so much because even though as a kid that meant a lot to me to see in that way,
Mhm.
my answer now would also probably be different for what I would do
Yeah,
now. But at the
yeah.
time it was different. And
But at
so
the
you
time,
could
yeah,
still touch somebody in a way, even if that's not what you would do now, like the way you went about it was meaningful in
right,
terms of like taking the positives from it
right.
instead of the negatives. So it's interesting that we can still take positives from two different scenarios,
Hmm.
um, if you choose to see it that way. But I think when
Yeah,
people choose to not, that's where you get more division.
yeah. Wow. Omar, thank you so much for joining me today on Honoring the Journey. I do honor your journey. I love it. I think it's beautiful and exciting and fun and hard, and it's like everything all in one. And so if somebody wanted to connect with you, is that a thing that you do? Do you connect with people, or how do
Yeah,
you
I think
how
right
where would they
now.
find you online?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter or X at Omar Zaheer DVM, and then on Instagram at Ozahir24. People can always feel free to message. I will say that right now I am very bad with
Behind?
my messaging, and that is because being on Survivor, I really didn't experience much hate at all, but
Yeah.
fortunately, but
Yeah.
since speaking out for Palestine, I've received a lot of hate,
Oh
so it
yeah,
has
I'm sure.
become very difficult for me to engage with DMs because it's an unsafe place sometimes. But I'm
Mm,
getting better at it, and I'm getting back into it. So
yeah.
I'm open to nice messages.
Nice. Yes, if you have anything nice to say, you can contact. Otherwise, stay away. No, I totally get that. We always say like, "Oh, we would love if you would give us a review on the podcast." And then
Yeah,
I'm like, "Yeah, but if you didn't like it, you don't
yeah.
have to do that. That's okay." But well, thank you so much, Omar. I appreciate your time. It was really good to
Thank you.
talk to you and
You
get
as
to
well.
know
Thank
you.
you so much.